Hello everyone, welcome back and thank you for joining us on the Live Unreal with Glover U podcast, where every week Jeff Glover and his coaches will dive deep into the questions that you are asking. They understand the challenges you are facing on a day-to-day basis and still work every day on the front lines of real estate, with Jeff and his team closing over 1,000 homes per year. In today's episode, Jeff Glover and Glover U head coach Kate Simon will continue the Real Talk series with no holds barred Q&A. Jeff and Kate will answer your questions straight to the point based on experience and day-to-day business. Now let's hear from Jeff Glover and Kate Simon.
Good morning.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Live Unreal podcast. I'm here with Kate Simon, and we are talking about a ever popular and slightly controversial topic today. Although I'm sure there's many other controversial topics that we could talk about. In the Real Talk series, we're getting into the nitty-gritty things in the real estate industry that you've always wanted to know, questions you've wanted to ask, and maybe weren't always getting the right answers. You know, in fact, actually on that topic alone, I don't know where I was, Kate, but somewhere this week, and maybe it was in the last podcast, we talked about how, you know, a broker or an owner or a team leader or a company that has a real estate brokerage that has a coaching company within it, which, you know, there's several of those out there. They can never be fully honest or transparent with the agent because it's always in the back of the mind of, well, if I'm too brutally honest, they'll quit. If I'm too brutally honest, they'll leave the business. Or worse, and I see this all the time, pushing some type of propaganda because that's what the company says to push. When you're paying this person to coach you, or when this leader is taking the role of coaching you. And I think that's why we've grown so quickly in the last 2-3 years, because people know we don't have any attachment to their brokerage or to their team. I mean, don't get me wrong, we're not out there encouraging people to find a new brokerage or to find a new team, but we're giving them real, raw, honest advice on things they can do to grow their business. And sometimes we may say things that go against what their company or what their franchise is encouraging them to do.
It's funny you bring that up. So actually one of my clients this week, he asked me, and I'll leave out the name and the brokerage that he's with and the brokerage he asked me about, but he basically said, hey, what are your thoughts on such and such brokerage? And yeah, I mean, I gave him, you know, we broke it down. We broke down the pros, the cons, what he's individually looking for, whether or not it's a good fit for him. But, you know, he started it by saying, hey, I know that you're affiliated with X. How do you feel about Y? And I feel like I constantly have to remind people that, of course, you know, we've built a business in a certain platform, but like my loyalty is to what's best for the client. I'm never going to like keep them in a certain world if it's truly not what's best for them. So, yeah, that actually just came up this week.
I think, and you know, by the way, I deal with those questions all the time. Yesterday, while I was working, as you say, I was golfing. I work a 4-day week now, according to Kate. Anyways.
Tim Ferriss wrote the 4-hour work week. I think Jeff's on the 4-day work week.
The 4-day work week, yeah.
I can't name a week in the last 60 to 90 days you've worked 6 days a week.
Do you know what I do on the weekends? Do I work at all on the weekends?
I think you're really trying to like become a PGA pro, which is cute. It is. I appreciate that. Okay. But
anyways, yesterday, winter is coming, which means that in this state, I'm gonna have to go back to working on Fridays again soon. Anyways,
or long weekends in Florida.
By the way, it's been like 3 Fridays in a row. Okay, there's been something. Okay. Anyways, yesterday I was speaking with a fellow Berkshire Hathaway agent, and you know, I don't think it's any secret that I'm affiliated with Keller Williams Realty. Technically, you're licensed as a realtor with Keller Williams Realty. And, you know, one of the things that I was saying to this gentleman was you to understand that you are welcome. This person runs a brokerage and has agents that he influences. I said, I really want you to understand that you and your company are welcome at our events. I don't ever want, and I think the perception is, you know, for a long, long time, Keller Williams was kind of known as, and don't get me wrong, I love my franchise. I mean, there's a reason why I'm in business with Gary Keller and this company. But if you notice, if you come to our events, or if you listen to this podcast, or you read the Gazette that comes out, it's very, 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 very rare that you'll ever hear anyone talking about the benefits of being affiliated with X company. right?
I agree.
The benefits of being affiliated with Keller Williams or Berkshire or Remax or Compass or EXP or whatever. That's not what we're here to do.
Right.
And so, I feel like there's a lot of brokers and owners out there who are either independent or with another franchise that say, you know what, hey, we love what Jeff and Kate are putting out, but we just can't endorse it. We just can't push our agents on it because the last thing I need is someone going to one of Jeff's events and, leaving the company and joining Keller Williams because they were surrounded by a bunch of Keller Williams agents. And so I think it's important. This isn't even our topic today, by the way, but I think it's important to point out because that's the vibe I got yesterday. This particular gentleman.
It's interesting. So not to cut you off, but I got an email 2 weeks ago, or that Facebook comment that was like, "Hey, do you guys coach people outside of KW?" And it was like, "Yes, we are completely." While professionally as realtors, yes, we hang our license with KW. Glover U is an independent company,
correct?
Right?
Yep. Non-denominational.
And I feel like, and I don't know. I mean, maybe our listeners can tell us. Maybe we can do a better job of actually stating that, but I guess I always thought that was clear, and maybe it hasn't been as clear.
Well, I think it's because a company like Keller Williams did such a good job growing at a fast pace, basically from, we'll just say 2005 to 2015, right? That 10-year run was explosive growth, and they were kind of known as, oh, don't go to one of their events. You're going to drink the Kool-Aid. You're going to join the company. You're going to get recruited.
Right.
And now there's new companies that are becoming the recruiting companies. And it's kind of funny. It's like KW is starting to feel a little bit more traditional in that sense because they're not really pushing recruiting and so forth like they used to. But anyways, I mean, don't get me wrong. They're still growing and it's a healthy organization. But it's not like that anymore. It doesn't have
the same stigma.
Yes, correct. There you go. The stigma, the pyramid scheme stigma that they had for a while. So what's interesting is if you come to one of our events, now I think at our last event in Orlando, Florida, I want to say that in the entire audience, we were approaching almost 50%
were we really?
Non-KW. It was around 40-something, like 41, 42%
That's huge,
of our attendees were not affiliated with KW. Now, most of them were independents. It's kind of interesting. I'm finding that. We do have a large independent brokerage following, if you will. And that kind of makes sense because independents, number one, they're probably not as threatened by the fact that we're affiliated, my license hangs with KW, but also their franchise, they're not, they're an independent, right? So they're not getting any value from the parent company because there is no parent company. We would love a day, and I see it coming very soon, where more than 50% of our audience is non-KW. And I think at that point, once we get to that point, which we're probably only a year away, honestly, or an event or two away, once we get to that point, I think then people will start saying, wow, this is, no, they didn't mention KW one time from the stage, Now, don't get me wrong, we have some panelists that are with KW, but they're also with Remax and Berkshire and Compass and, other companies as well. So
but also on that note, I mean, we'll feature the best of somebody at their craft. And if they so happen to be KW, that's fantastic. But when we have them on stage, it's very rarely about KW. It's about the individual and what they did with the tools that were given to them.
Right.
So it's even then, I mean, there's very little, pushing of one brand or another.
Yeah. Yep.
At least within our organization.
Yep. That's good. The moral of the story is this. Don't be threatened. Don't be afraid. Don't be concerned. You're not going to get recruited. I could care less whether you join KW. I don't care what company you're with. I don't care if you're an independent. I don't care if you're with Remax. I don't care if you're with EXP. You are all welcome at our events. You're all welcome to listen to our stuff. Granted, now don't get me wrong. When you're in the audience, are there EXP people trying to recruit KW people? And are there KW people trying to recruit Colbeck? I'm sure there's like a little bit of that happens.
Yeah.
But the reality is that's not who we are. That's not what we stand for. We're here to help people learn and grow and get to the next level, period. And we're here to share with them exactly what we're doing. And there's no sugarcoating. There's no bias that you will get with some companies that have incentive to say things that cause you to want to stay at the company. And I guess that's probably the other moral of the story or the point that I really want to drive home. We're always going to be brutally honest because we don't have any skin in the game. We don't have any attachment to whether you leave your brokerage or leave your team or join a team. We're not attached to that at all.
No, what we're attached to is making sure that whoever the individual is with their goals, with, whatever they're coming to the table with, that they are in the best environment for them. So that's the loyalty. And I know that in the past, maybe this is, ruffled some feathers or made some waves, but if in discussion we discover that you're at the wrong place, I'm not going to be afraid to share with you,
Correct.
Hey, this is why I don't think this is a great fit. Consider XYZ over here.
Yep. And that's our job, right? Okay, so let's shift gears. One of the things that we've been sent a lot of questions, so we appreciate that. You're sending in your questions, and we got a list of questions here. You can send those in to info@gloveru.com, info@gloveru.com. Whenever you have a question for us, we are going to answer it for you. All right. So for those of you that sent in questions, you're like, when are you going to get around to answering my question? We have them in front of us. We're going to get through them. I promise you we will. Well, one of the questions that is talked about a lot, and we started the podcast going down this path before I went on that tangent. So sorry, or you're welcome, depending on what you thought of it, was this whole idea of, all right, I hear about, being a real estate agent. I can be an entrepreneur. Which is so funny to me because it's like, you're a salesperson, all right?
Right.
If you buy into this idea that you're a salesperson first, and maybe later you can be an entrepreneur in your business or in another business, you're much better off. But I see so many people do the opposite, right? Come into it with this idea, I'm getting into real estate so I can be an entrepreneur. And then they never actually do what it takes to learn how to sell or learn any skills. But they're building a business. They're whatever. So anyways, this whole idea of, if I'm starting brand new in the business, do I join a team, start on my own? Or if I'm succeeding to some degree in this business, do I start a team or join a team or just stay on my own? And I feel like there's a lot of people that are probably wrestling with this decision in their mind, A, or B, are forced into, oh no, you have to start a team. If you start succeeding, like you're going to attract people. People are going to want to work for you. You have to start a team. I feel like for the last 10 years, it's kind of been the thing you do, right? And I know that there's probably a lot of teams that give this conversation a little bit of a bad name, if you will. I mean, it's maybe harder for us to make a point when somebody's had a bad experience with a team in their town. But the reality is I want to dig deep into this whole discussion of, all right, I'm on a team, do I stay?
Yeah.
I'm solo, do I build a team or do I join one? Or do I stay solo? Or I know there's agents out there, because I talk to them all the time, that are running teams that absolutely hate it and they want to go back to being solo.
Right.
Or they actually would consider being like a lead listing agent on a great team.
Right.
So let's have a discussion around that.
Yeah.
So you get the question a lot, I'm sure,
Yeah.
of, Kate, what should I do? Should I join a team? Should I stay on this team? Should I go solo? I mean, I know even through the years prior to Glover you'd have agents from JGA reach out to you and say, what's it like, Kate? I know you're out in California. I'm thinking of going on my own. Jeff made this decision and made me mad. Or, my split sucks here or whatever, right? You dealt with those conversations. So, what's your thought on all that?
Well, it's not a straightforward answer, and it kind of parlays into the conversation we just had on really digging deep on what's important to the individual and uncovering the possible right path or paths through a series of questions. So I want to preface this entire conversation by saying there is no absolute right way, whether it's a team or solo agent. I think what's really important here and what often gets lost in this conversation is who's the individual and what are their ultimate goals outside of real estate. Listen, guys, we've created for lack of a better term, an unreal life by doing what we're doing. But you have a life outside of this. I have a life outside of this. I mean, of course, succeeding at a high level is very exciting to us, but to say that we're going to put on our tombstone, ran the #1 real estate team or whatever, that's probably not among our biggest things that we're chasing in life. And I wouldn't expect that for anybody else either. So I think it's really important for when we're going into this conversation for an individual to have a really strong grip on what's most important to them. And actually, on a tangent note, I get a lot of that with coaching. People say, well, I'm not even really sure what I need to be coached on. Well, I need a coach and I'm not really sure why. And, and I know this might be unpopular, but I'll tell people, listen, you have a goal, I'll coach you to it. But if you come to me without direction and without a goal, can't really help you with that.
Yeah.
It's not my job to beat you with a stick to be a superstar. It's your job to be the raw talent, the raw material, and let's refine it. Let's get you on the straight and narrow. So the idea of team or solo agent really comes down to the individual and what's most important to them. Now, what I will say is it also depends. Are you a brand new agent? You just got your license? Or are you a little bit more of a veteran? You've been selling for a couple of years, or more than that, where you've been selling for 10 plus. Now, I'll tell you, do you want me to go through the pros and the cons?
Sure,
Okay.
please, yeah.
So let's just start with brand new agent, okay?
And by the way, can I put a disclaimer out there before you go through those? Remember, you're getting honest advice from us based on experience. If you were to go to your broker, your manager, your team leader, your operating principal, by the way, I'm biased. I am an operating principal. I'm not going to say they're going to give you bad advice, but just know that many times their advice is also going to have the company's interest in mind as well.
So can I share with you, whenever I'm going to advice for somebody, and this is whether it's business, whether it's financial, and I know you actually hate this about me, I'm the biggest critic. The first thing I'm thinking is what interest do they have in what they're telling me?
Yeah.
And I'm constantly looking for that. And maybe that's the big skeptic in me, but I'm always going to be looking at so-and-so gave me this piece of information and what specifically can they gain from it?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I encourage you all to listen to this, listen to our information,
Yep.
the same thing.
Listen, I'll be the first to admit, never would I ever tell a team leader in any of our offices, hey, if you think someone's fit for a team, I want you to really push them to be a solo agent because we make more on them as a solo agent. The reality is we do.
Yeah.
We make less.
Yeah.
Most real estate brokerages make less on the team agent than they do a solo agent. So it's natural for someone to say this. Ready? Well, you could start on a team, but why don't you try it on your own first and then see how it goes? And by the way, that's not bad advice. That's actually maybe a legitimate response. But also in that...
I disagree, and I'm going to stop you.
Fair. Well, in that is the motivation to, let me see if I can at least make a little more off of them if they go solo.
I'm sorry.
Please, let's
I
hear
feel
it.
so strongly about that. If you are a leader in the real estate industry and you see a solo agent or you see an agent struggling who's genuinely asking for you what they can do to secure their livelihood and you opt to tell them something that benefits you instead of them, shame on you. Shame on you. Because if it's the difference between somebody staying in the business and succeeding or floundering in self-doubt and burning through their savings and racking up debt for 6 months, shame on you.
Yeah.
Honestly. I feel very strongly that as a leader, whether it benefits you or not, it is your responsibility to tell people what's best for them, not what's best for you.
Right, because number one, life is full circle. It's going to come back to you anyways. They're more likely to succeed, and even though you make less money off of them, you got a greater chance that they'll succeed. And I agree with you, but know that those conversations are taking place every single day.
Well,
and the advice every single day that's being given is... try it on your own first. See how you do, or just stick it out another 3 months before you consider joining a team. Let's see what we can do to help you buy. You know what? Let me give you some money to buy some leads. So let's see what that does for you. Or why don't you
listen.
download this?
If you're if you're the agent who you have a partner or spouse that's working full time, and one of the questions I'll ask people is, what's your financial situation? How much runway do you have to play with this? Could you give it another 6 months at this pace and still financially be okay? If those answers are yes and their livelihood's taken care of and they're not going to go crazy, yeah, of course. I'm going to encourage them to potentially explore the solo agent realm, depending on the questions that we uncover in the conversation.
Well, and I should also be clear, Kate. The example I was giving, so you're absolutely, I agree with what you're saying. The example I was giving was a brand new licensee. Not necessarily someone who's solo who's struggling. Meaning a brand new licensee says, I think I'd be a better fit in the team environment.
So, okay.
And then
but
very
this
common,
is not straightforward,
broker,
though.
owner, manager, leader say, why don't you try it on your own first? That's very common. That happens.
But there's a caveat to that, okay? And now I know that I sound like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth here, but understand that this is a very layered conversation. So And again, we tell the person what's best for them, but understand that as a potential team leader, there is a benefit for them trying it on their own for the first 6 months. Because if we've had, challenges with that too, where we get a brand new agent on the team and they will either love it and they're married to life to JGA, or after a couple of years, they're like, hey, I've never tried it on my own. So there's a little bit of that.
Don't get me wrong. If you're listening to this and you're leading a team, it is 1,000 times better
to have
when they've already tried it on their own.
Exactly,
right? They know what it's like versus, unfortunately, through the years at JGA, we became known as like good at developing brand new agents. So we had a lot of brand new agents who didn't know any different and said, oh, okay, I got my training, I had my success, I think it's time for me to try it on my own. And then they go out and try it on their own, and maybe some of them succeed, maybe some of them fail, but they're more likely to be curious about what it's like out there.
Yeah, right.
And you have retention issues, because of that.
So, okay, going back to I'm a brand new licensee, team or solo agent. So, and again, some of these questions might not even come up until they are 6 to 12 months in and they realize, oh, I thought it was like this. It's really like that, right? I mean, everybody gets into real estate with a preconceived notion, right? So we'll sit down with agents. Hey, talk to me about why you want to get into real estate. Oh, I really like houses. And it's like
love architecture,
love interior design. It's like,
have you ever seen what's the Selling Sunset? Yeah, I've seen Selling Sunset. That's it. I want that. Okay.
Yeah,
good
it's
luck.
really cute, and that's about 20% of the business. The other 80% is like 10%.
I was gonna say like 2%
I know, but I don't want to
business.
discourage anybody listening.
Right.
So anyway, it's a conversation you have to try to guide them on in regards to, okay, let's talk about what's most important to you. Are you let's just say you're a mom and you want to build relationships with people and you want to earn some commission checks, or are you really looking to build a long-term brand? Those are two different paths. Now, you can net the same amount of money, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but you have to essentially ask yourself, do you care whose name is on the sign? And if you do, are you willing to spend the time, the energy, the money in marketing and building a business? Or do you want to become the best salesperson you can, make the same amount of money or more, focus just on actually selling real estate, developing your skills, and having a life? Because let's be honest, like being an agent with leverage and building a business are two entirely different roles that often get confused.
Yeah.
So
I use the example, and this is of course extreme, but I honestly believe that an agent running a team and also selling real estate, if you're selling real estate and you decide you want to start a team, have your own team, run a team, whatever, you're going to go from selling real estate 40 hours a week to selling real estate 40 hours a week, or maybe 30, but now running a team, recruiting, training, managing, coaching, developing another 30 hours a week there. So you go from working 40 hours a week to at least 60. And that doesn't necessarily mean that your income is going to increase. Now, you might be working more, but maybe you're more satisfied with what you're doing. I don't know.
Yeah, it's certainly not one-to-one, and I know we've talked about this before, but, without, like, completely going down this rabbit hole, per person you've poured into and hired, I'm going to go ahead and make a wild assumption, your income or profitability has not increased one-to-one.
No.
And we don't have to talk about what that is.
We've covered that. We beat that one up pretty much. Basically, what Kate's saying is the net return on your time is better selling real estate than leading a real estate team or running a real estate brokerage, right?
Yeah,
that's essentially what you're saying.
100%.
And by the way, that model is proven. We've beat that up a million times over.
Yep.
Right?
So, okay, team or solo agent's really going to come down to what's most important to the individual. Do you want your own brand? Do you want your own identity? Or are you looking to just cash a paycheck, have more free time to live your life, go on vacations without wondering what's going to happen to the business?
Yep.
Now, the other thing, and I'll encourage people, because I have a lot of new agents who join JGA that are like, hey, I don't know if this is the right fit for me. I'm not sure what I want to do in 2 years. And you might love this answer, you might not. I'm sure I'll know how you feel about this, but I say, listen, at the end of the day, at least for our team, okay? And in a perfect scenario, and I know not every team is like this, a solid team should be offering you daily accountability and training. It should be offering you monthly coaching. It should be offering you areas and ways you can develop your skills that you couldn't get on your own. By the way, if you're on a team and you're not getting that, I'm going to challenge you to ask yourself, what value are you getting, right? Like, so number one, that's a separate conversation.
Yeah.
But I'll talk to these newer agents who are, hey, I don't know what's the best fit. And I say, listen, you get 2 years to this system, you can do whatever the heck you want to do.
Yeah.
But nobody and nothing is going to train you faster or expedite your growth and success than being a part of something bigger than yourself. So that's number one. So you have to ask yourself, how quickly do you want to climb to the top of the mountain?
Well, and I think that even in our team, we've learned to do a better job of, because one of the benefits, or at least one of the reasons why people go on their own, is because they want the recognition in the community. They want to have their own identity. They want to have their own brand. I mean, we're going as far as, like, I know, for instance, part of our 2021 business plan is bringing on full-time videographer and PR person to help our agents build their own brands within our brand, right? And the thing is like, I don't need to be front and center. I think there's probably a point in time where, and every team's a little bit different, where once it's been in existence for a long enough time, we don't really need to advertise the team as much anymore. The agents on the team need to do their advertising, need to do their own promotion. So I think there is a win-win. If I'm listening to this and I'm leading a team, and you want to reduce your turnover, you really need to look at how can you give your associates more recognition, not within the company, because most people who follow us, they know, how to give recognition, monthly awards, weekly awards, contests, whatever. How do you get your agents more recognition in the community? And that's something that we're focusing on as JGA, Jeff Glover and Associates. So if you're a lead agent or, considering running a team or whatever, and you're listening to this, you really need to be mindful of how you can promote your associates to the communities that they work in and to the communities that they serve. Because that's a reason, by the way, in many cases, why agents go on their own. Because they feel like they don't have an identity. They feel like they don't have a brand because they're constantly pushing the team's brand.
So I get that, right? And I think what's always really tripped me up is, like, I've understood very early on, right? I mean, I've been on your team, succeeded on your team, and I've always been, it's always been Jeff Glover's sign, and I even get that now with Glover U. Kate, people would follow you if you started your own thing. Why don't you start your own thing? Why, whatever. And I've always understood the value of being part of a brand that I don't have to pay for and create. I don't want to do that. I want to do what I'm good at, which is only 30% of everything we're building. Right? Yep. So I when people say they want to build their own brand and whatever within the community, that's fantastic, so long as you understand how much time and money that actually takes. And if you are willing to do that, absolutely, that's probably the best role for you. Right? But I think when people have the conversation of, oh my gosh, you're giving away X to the brand, or you don't get your name on the sign, I don't know if they fully understand what they get in exchange for that. And maybe they do, and it really just comes down to, okay, great, what's most important to you? Like, for me personally, I would never work 70 hours a week and spend the money I know you spend just to have my name on a sign. I don't need it. Not that important to me. I like my life the way that it is.
So, by the way, and I think that, and when Kate and I were talking before we started recording this, we said, okay, we don't want to, obviously, for those of you that are listening, you might say, well, obviously Jeff is biased, he's leading a team, so he's going to probably push us to more so be agents on teams, and, Kate is biased because she's his right hand, and, technically she's on his team, and so, no, what there are benefits of being
I've been a solo agent.
Right? There are benefits of leading a team. What are those in your mind?
Wait, are there benefits of being a solo agent? Or
benefits of being a solo agent, benefits of leading a team. Like,
in
other words, we talked about people would be concerned that, of course, we're going to push teams, and of course, we're going to point out the benefits of being on someone's team. What are the benefits of being a solo agent or leading a team?
What I think's got to be really rewarding is you get to create your own baby, right? You get to create your brand. You get to create what you want your customer experience to be. You get to create what you want your agent experience to be. Oh my gosh, we get to design a logo. That's super exciting.
There's no disagreeing with the way it's being done, right? Because you're
and
controlling the way it's being done.
I think that, and actually I'll say, and this is a very unique example, but I think what's got to be really attractive to being a solo agent, solo broker, solo team is, team leader is, like, this potential, this excitement to start and create something from scratch. And I will say, and listen, it's taken a long time. It's taken 10 plus years, but you've more or less given me that lateral with Glover U. I mean, listen, you know, obviously it's your brand, it's your whatever, but I feel that same fulfillment and creativity where you're like, do it.
Yeah.
Figure it out, create what you want. But I have your support in it. So I also think that it kind of comes down to who's the leader you're working with, and do they give you that freedom and lateral to creatively express yourself. Now listen, if I felt boxed in, Glover U has to look like this, has to be this, it probably wouldn't be fulfilling to me, and I'd have more motivation
Motivated to go do your thing.
to do it the way I want it to be done. But you give that freedom. You know, so I think that's important. An important lesson for a team leader to hear is make sure you're giving a little bit of latitude for somebody to make it their own within your system.
Yeah. I can't stress enough, if you are leading a team, giving your agents, your staff, your right hand autonomy to do their own thing to some degree, making sure they feel like they are able to build their brand too, and that they're able to get community recognition as well, not just company recognition. And also, control over decisions, right? I think that there is, maybe not necessarily full control, but input, whatever, in decision making. I think that will satisfy a lot of the benefits that people who make the decision to go it alone or do their own thing, that'll satisfy a lot of that piece.
The thing that I feel like I would personally get if I did this on my own, I already get by being a part of what this is, with less risk, with less overhead, with quite honestly less time, right? Because of that. Now, as far as benefits of being a team lead, I mean, listen, there is a feeling, right, of that recognition. There is a feeling of, oh my gosh, it's Jeff Glover's name in lights, right? But at the end of the day, that also comes at a cost, right? And you have to more or less ask yourself, what cost are you willing to pay for that? Now, for those who know you and know you well, it's a very big cost. You've made a lot of personal sacrifices, business sacrifices. I mean, your life looks a certain way, and, you know, if you ever do decide you want a family or whatever one day, I mean, it's, you know, this is your business, you know, the business is your wife,
business
right?
Is my baby. Yeah,
right.
That's right. Yeah.
And so everything kind of comes second, and most people in your world understand that, right?
Yes.
So there's a lot of other people who maybe do have a husband or wife or a family where they would never be willing to give that up. And listen, I understand that. I wouldn't, you know, so you have to sort of ask yourself, at what cost are you willing to go this hard?
Yep.
And I mean, that's a real thing that needs to be considered.
And that's probably why we only see in every town one or two agents who ever get to that
because
level.
check it out. And let's just take the Detroit market, for example.
Because of the sacrifice.
Let's say there's another individual who is just as smart, just as bright, same budget. Let's even say that they're better than you at certain facets.
No, that can't be possible.
But let's just say that, right?
Yep.
Let's paint the picture that this person's more connected, they're more whatever. They have a bigger budget, they have a bigger whatever. At least in the world of where you're operating, I don't know if I've seen anybody make as many personal sacrifices. And that would probably be the limiting factor. All things being equal, you go when other people stop.
So can you tell the listeners what you mean by personal sacrifices?
Well, I mean, it's a Saturday morning, number one, you know, and it's, you know, you were here at 9 a.m. I mean, I was here with you at 9 a.m. I mean, we're probably going to put in a 4, 5, 6 hour work day, and we do this. I do this with you once a month. You do this every other Saturday, sometimes more.
Every other Saturday. Yep.
It's, you know, listen, I mean, my phone's going off at 10:30 at night with Jeff with ideas that Taylor and I have to sift through and figure out, okay, which train of thought are we following? Which ones are we ignoring?
How many margaritas has he had? How many
drinks has he had? We have to filter this through. And then I pick up my phone in the morning at 6:30, and holy crap, there's 5 messages
Back at
from
it
Jeff.
again. Right.
Yeah, and like I kind of joked with him. I'm like, how many cups of coffee have you had? You know, and like,
actually, I think the.
Okay.
How many lines of blow did you do?
I literally said, how much coke did you do this morning? But the reality is, I mean, listen, if you had a spouse or a wife or kids, I mean, I can just tell you right now, if that was Andrew, like, shit would get old pretty quick.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I would personally not want to be married to somebody like you. No offense.
Oh, thanks a lot.
For my personal goals,
right.
It would not work,
sure.
right? But again,
because you would always feel like you'd come second to the business.
Well, and I guess I would have to go into it knowing that, like, okay, yeah, this is how this would be. But okay, listen, if it were, and we're going down a rabbit hole here, but listen, if I were in a personal relationship with you, I would understand that the life that I'm living is because of the because of the decisions you've made over here.
Yeah.
So it's a you can't have this and not the sacrifices, right?
That reminds me of the Entourage quote, right?
What?
Where they're at the therapist. Well, you've seen I think it was Gino sent us the video of the, but no, Ari is with his wife at a therapist. His phone is going off, and she looks at him and says, "Turn that off." And he's like, "But babe, it's the bat phone. Babe, it's the bat phone." Meaning like it's like the emergency line.
Right.
They're in the middle of a therapy. She says, "I said turn that off."
Yeah.
He says, "No, I can't. I have to answer. No, nobody ever calls me this. This is a big deal. Like it's a big client or a sign or something like that." And so finally, he stands up and says, "Look, if you want to live in Agora Hills and attend group therapy and group workout sessions, then fine. I won't answer my phone. But if you want 6 weeks at a Tuscan village, you want a Beverly Hills mansion,
100%, though.
then you're gonna let me answer my phone. It rings on a mother effing Wednesday." At noon on a mother effing Wednesday. You're going to let me answer this.
Well, and like, again, on a personal note, Andrew works not nearly the same hours you do, but he's working, like Sunday, I sent you that video of our driver, that was whatever.
Oh, yeah.
So Sunday he had a big fire to put out, and it's like, yeah, it'd be great to have a 9 to 5, but I like the life that we live and whatever. So the point is, there are sacrifices, and you either are with a spouse or a partner or a family situation that fully understands that, and you're willing to do that, or you're like, crap, Kate, I like working 5 days a week. I want to be home for dinner at 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
And that's okay. But all things being equal, if you are just as or more talented than somebody like you with as big of a budget, and you're home at dinner at 6 o'clock and you're working till 9, you're going to win.
Yeah.
Even if you're not as sharp, just by keeping going, you're going to win.
Yep. So the reality is most people don't choose that because that's life isn't for them, or that sacrifice isn't for them, or that won't work for their family, or that won't work for their spouse. And they end up, by the way, I think this is probably the majority of people who lead teams, who start teams, they don't realize the sacrifice that it takes to get to number one, or to get to the level that they see, the people on stage getting to. And it becomes an internal struggle. Like, did I really make the right choice? Maybe I should just go back to being solo. I mean, I see it all the time in the industry where agents will just fire their whole team and say, you know what, I was better off just doing my own thing. Or even, I think there's a we'll call it a silent group out there that is leading a team that would much rather wake up and just one day just be on a team, right? And not have to be the leader.
Yeah.
So, can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, well, listen, I mean, now this is not all-encompassing, all-inclusive, but one of the biggest reasons why I see where I can identify it in somebody, but either they're not willing to either admit it or come to the realization is, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but it is a little bit of ego, okay? Like, let's say that I'm a solo agent, Metro Detroit, I built a great brand, my clients love me. Like, honestly, how not fun would it feel for me to sit across the desk from you and be like, all right, cool, I'm ready for your name to go up in my client's yard, right? And like, that would be a huge blow to not even just my ego, but like what I've created.
Yeah. Which, by the way, Kate, I don't know if you know this or not, and this is, again, something I would share for all lead agents out there, and something actually we're considering doing as a company next year. Number one, nowadays, if one of our agents takes a listing, they are very prominent on a rider on top of the sign. We didn't have that in the past. So that helps fulfill that, right? So you go take a listing in Birmingham, your face and your name is on top of that sign. You don't see that with a lot of teams, number one. Number two, we're actually considering having panels in 2021 and beyond.
That just go to the agent.
That it's the agent's face and the agent's name, and right? So, you have to be, for those of you that are leading teams, you have to be thinking about that, because what Kate said is spot on. That is a benefit that somebody gets when they go on their own. So then you think about, all right, how can we build a company, build an organization, but still satisfy the ego's need to be seen on that sign in the front lawn?
Well, and I think that that's ultimately where we as a team are going to have to shift to. I think that's where a lot of team leaders, it would be wise for them to have a model that spoke to that really talented individual who wants to build their own brand.
Yes. And you can build your own brand on the right team if those pieces are in place.
I know, but that kind of...
It's just not common.
I mean,
it's
that
like
goes back to... And so again, I don't want to go down a rabbit hole, but the challenging thing is, we have this question of solo, agent, or team. Some of the next questions I'm asking are, okay, what teams are you considering and why?
Yep.
And it's not even a name thing, but the next questions I'll ask you is, okay, great, for a 50-50 split, for a 60-40 split, for a 40-60 split, what do you get? And and I think the biggest bummer, for lack of a better term, is a lot of these agents who really do belong on a team or would love to be on a team are working with crappy offerings. They're working with, you're joining a team, you don't have training, you don't have accountability, you don't have marketing, there is no lead flow.
Yeah.
And so in that instance, it's like, well, you kind of should go on your own.
Sure, right.
So it's either you join a team that enhances your life, and we can talk about the whole split versus net conversation. You join a team who allows you to do more, have more, experience more by being on the team. Or listen, I'm going to be honest with you. If you're just joining a team and you're joining, Joe Blow and Associates, and you get nothing except a 50-50 split and maybe a couple sign calls, I'd probably say go on your own, honestly.
Yeah, because in theory, and we've beat this one up, this whole split versus net conversation, in theory, you should be netting the same. It should be your goal as an agent, and it should be the lead agent's goal, the person leading the team, to show agents and show examples of how an agent can net the same amount on the team versus on their own. The difference is, whether it's 150,000, 250,000, 350,000, whatever that number is, the difference is having more time back. And that's when you know you're on the right team, and that's when you know you might want to consider joining a team if you don't have the desire to build something from scratch and creative.
I think there's two phases as a team leader when you decide, okay, cool, I've got 3 agents coming to me, I've got so many leads I don't know what to do with. I'm going to delegate all these leads. I might even train them. Cool. I'm going to get all these agents to selling 25, 35 houses a year. That's like the initial phase, okay? But you need to be thinking 3-5 years down the road. Let's say you have a team of 3 agents that are all selling 25, 35 houses a year. All right, cool. How do you keep them?
Yeah.
So it's number one, how do you train and develop them? And then how do you actually keep these people who are talented on your team? And you better have a strong value proposition that doesn't just revolve around leads if you actually want talented agents. Because if I'm a talented agent, I don't need your leads.
So do you know what Gary Keller's answer? This is actually something I learned from Gary Keller, and it's funny. We just got done talking about how I'm not going to push KW propaganda, but honestly, I've learned a lot from the guy, and I have a lot of respect for Gary. And I talk about Mike Ferry and Floyd Wickman and the Schweitzers and people that have been mentors to me. But he said that's when your vision needs to get bigger, and if your vision doesn't get bigger, then that's when they'll leave. Right? In other words. A perfect example, and this is something that happened in KW, and then you started to see other franchises do this. A lot of the top agents were starting to expand, if you will, to other markets. Hey, if I can buy these Boomtown leads or these Commission Inc. leads or Zillow leads or whatever, and in this market, and I've mastered this process, I know how many to buy, how much to spend, then I can go to Topeka. Is that in Kansas?
Yeah.
I can go to Topeka, Kansas, and grab an agent over there and send them some leads, and now I have an agent working in that area. Well, this was actually starting to happen around the company prior to it becoming a thing.
Yeah, but it's such a flawed.
You're
missing
there's
vision.
There's so many
vision.
Yes, there's so many flaws in it. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm not endorsing it. All I'm saying is that's an example of where Gary had to say, oh crap, if these agents are starting to do this, I need to have a bigger vision of, I need to train them how to do it. I need to put together a system. It needs to be a part of KW, Keller Williams expansion. And so that was an example of him recognizing that his agents were starting to go a little rogue and getting a bigger vision. So that way we said, you know what? Yeah, we can do this within this company. So that's just one example. But yes, once you have top producers and they're, besides for being good people, they are constantly wanting more, yearning for more. Top producers usually are yearning for more. You can't just keep giving them the same. You have to expand your vision.
Yeah, and I think that we'll just say talented people, okay? And that'll be like a blanket statement for people who know how to produce. Let's say they're self-starters. Let's say they're motivated, they're talented, they're a nice line item on your P&L, whatever the case may be. Like, as a team leader, your job is not, it shifts from training them how to sell real estate to being a visionary that can help bridge the gap between where they are and where they want to be in their life. And I had this conversation with somebody this week who said, oh my gosh, I have another project that I think you would be great at. Here's this person, they're starting this, and you would work really, really well on this vision. And I said, no, you have to understand. I don't buy into brands. I don't buy into visions. I buy into people. And it's gotta be like, I will, if you wanted to start an ice cream truck next week, I would buy that vision because of who you are. But you could start, the number one gym, which I might be passionate about, and it might not be somebody I believe in.
But you want to know who's behind it.
Yeah.
And what they've accomplished and why they're doing this.
Yeah. And I mean, it comes back, I know it's like kind of a cheesy statement, but it's like, you get offered a seat on a rocket ship, you don't ask what seat. Like, you get on the rocket ship. And that's always been at least my mentality with working with you, with being on your team, et cetera, endorsing virtually anything that you've started. So
Question: how do you handle under this discussion? Because I know this comes up a lot. We know that a lot of successful agents who are on teams, and by the way, I mean, it doesn't. If you're with a franchise, technically you're part of a team, right? I'm part of being with a franchise.
You're part of Gary Keller's model.
Correct. Right. I'm part of a bigger vision, right? So how do you handle the question as an agent? Because I could see it being a little like uncomfortable, or I don't know if embarrassing is the word, but a successful agent on a team gets this all the time. You're doing so well. Why aren't you just doing this on your own?
So, and I know, like, we've talked about this.
And by the way, what is the psychology of the person asking that question, too, by the way?
Well, number one, it's incredibly flattering. Like, thank you for seeing something in me, and it feels really, really good. And if I'm the person receiving that compliment, oh my gosh, nobody has ever, validated me to this degree before. This feels really, really good. Right. And I think at the crux of it, it puts the seed in somebody's mind of, man, am I not living to my potential? Am I wasting my time? Am I not doing something that I should be doing? Yep. And to me, listen, people ask me all the time, why don't you start this? Why don't you do that? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, listen, it's because I know intimately what's most important to me. And I don't care. You could say that I'm the most talented person on the planet, or talented coach, talented whatever. My vision for what I want my life to look like is so strong that I don't get swayed by an ego stroke. It's not, I guess that's not what fuels me. It's that I know where I'm going. And actually, Ken Posick said this to me when I was in California, because I used to talk to him, because he was moving to Florida a couple years after I moved to California, and we had this fun conversation.
Great agent, by the way.
Awesome.
He moved from Detroit to Orlando, attended our last event, and we had him on stage.
Yeah, so we used to talk, because his first year in Orlando, he was like, holy crap, this is humbling. I said, yep, but of course, if you know Ken, he's absolutely killing it now. Yep. But he said to me, because I was a solo agent in California, and it wasn't because I wanted to be a solo agent. I did interview a couple teams. I did really want to be a part of the team.
I can't tell you how many times we talked about, like, Jeff, would you just start JGA out here? And I mean, in theory, it sounded like a cool idea, but you were genuinely serious about that. Like, you really wanted me to have something out there.
I needed a leader I could trust out there, and I interviewed teams, I interviewed team leaders, and I never found the right fit for me. And I hate to say it, you kind of spoiled us, right? By having such a robust value proposition. I was like, oh my gosh, everything fell flat. So I would talk to Ken and really say, like, God, I don't know what I want to do. And he said, I'll never forget this. This is one of my favorite things anybody's ever told me. He says, Kate, you have to understand that the number 10 person working at Facebook right now is making more than the person who started Facebook too. And I was like, holy crap. Yeah, nothing has ever made more sense.
I've heard him say that before, and that's a great example, right?
Yeah, and I was like, I finally get it. Like, supporting somebody else's vision at a high level could still be more profitable and take you further than starting your own vision.
It's the whole entrepreneur versus intrapreneur,
Yeah.
right? Meaning intrapreneur is somebody who's building a life and building a vision and building a business within someone else's vision. And as long as that vision is big enough, they're more likely to succeed within a vision that already exists versus going out and creating, like you said, Facebook number 2, you know, and you know, building their own vision, right?
Now, listen, there's nothing wrong with starting Facebook number 2. I just feel like it's widely underestimated what it actually takes to start Facebook number 2, for instance.
That, and I think a lot of people think that starting Facebook number 2 will be more profitable, right? If we go back to the real estate industry, starting your own team or going solo will be more profitable. And that's not always the case, right? I mean, maybe with some crappy teams, yes, because like you said, they're on a 50-50, they're getting some leads.
No, by the way, there's the middle
call.
ground. There's the middle ground of I'm a lead agent / I'm doing the most listings. I have a buyer's agent / showing agent and 2 admin. I still think, and I'm sure you'd agree, that if there was a hybrid between being a solo agent and being on a team, that model per P&L is probably still the most profitable.
It is.
Keeping it super small.
Yeah, no, we've talked about this. I mean, we've said from the stage, I think the most profitable model for an individual real estate agent is having an executive assistant, having a showing agent, having a buyer's agent who, you know, is willing to work with buyers, and maybe a secondary listing agent who's willing to go on the C and D, you know, quality listing appointments, right? Like that's it. And keeping it at that is very profitable, especially if you can keep your expenses low. And some teams, by the way, offer that opportunity, right? Some teams allow their agents to use showing agents. Some teams allow their agents to handle, you know, to hire executive assistants. So it could be done on a team, but most teams don't. And that's, again, goes back to why people feel kind of forced to go on their own to grow and build.
Yeah.
So if I'm asked that question and I'm having success, you know, on a team, what should my response be to why aren't you on your own? Like, how do I, like, you know, make that person feel, why?
Well, you have to be super clear. Like, okay, while I might fit into your vision of Glover you fit into my vision on what I want my life to look like. I mean, we talked about this before we pressed record, but I don't work past 3:00.
Yeah.
You're never going to hear me brag about working 40 or 60 hours a week. It's never going to be my life.
How many hours do you work, Kate?
I will not disclose that.
We're going to have to go back and revisit the salary.
Listen, you've hired me to get a job done. You haven't hired me to get it done in a certain amount of time.
Oh, okay.
So,
no, but I think that, and we'll cover this on another podcast, but in fact, I think, and we'll make a note of this, I would like to know what Kate Simon's typical day looks like. So we don't have time today. Well, we might, because it sounds like it's pretty short, but we'll cover that on the next one. Okay, last but not least, we got to get into this. So we had a question from both Tara Carter and Michael Page. Best practices for keeping your mindset and your discipline strong in these times, right? It's mid-October, you know, coronavirus is still a thing. It's less talked about, but it's amazing to me. You know, in Michigan, for instance, where we're at, we're having 1,000 cases a day. Every day. The last time we had 1,000 cases a day, like 14 days in a row, was like April. 1,000 a day.
I thought it was whatever. We'll talk about it.
Now, the reason why they're not talking about it as much, and we don't have to get into it, is because the death rate is substantially lower, and the percentage of people testing positive is at like 3.2%. So that's why we're not hearing about it a lot. You know, of course, depending on what side you're, there's more testing. That's why there's more cases. Whatever. We still have 1,000 cases a day.
Yeah.
So it's a real thing. So what are some best practices, and you're the perfect person to ask this to. And I've got some ideas as well. What are the best practices for keeping your mindset and your discipline strong in these unsettling times still?
Well, and this is something that we had to adjust to early on, and it's something I encourage a lot of our clients to do pretty frequently, and whether it's on a monthly basis or a quarterly basis, you have to be reevaluating what's the goal and what's the work, number one, required to hit that goal, and number two, what do you want to do, right? And I think where a lot of people are feeling sidelined or discouraged or burnt out right now is they're holding themselves to the standard and the business plan that they agreed to in December or January. And if they're behind, tell me that's not going to be discouraging. Right? Like, yeah, absolutely. If you haven't course corrected and haven't said, okay, this year is not turning out the way I wanted it to, period, then yeah, you're going to be holding on to that expectation of what something should look like. So you more or less need to recalibrate your expectations of what's possible and win within that. So I'm working on the accountability piece. I'm working on the accountability piece we're doing in Missouri next week. And a lot of people, I think, assume, and maybe I put this vibe out there, I'm sure I do, that accountability and coaching, you need to be like the most hardcore at everything. I mean, listen, there's a time in my life pretty recently where I trained 6 days a week. I mean, I'm super clean with my diet. I have a six-pack and yada, yada, yada. Right now, I'm at a place...
By the way, that goes back to the whole sacrifice conversation. We forgot to mention that I sacrificed my health, and I'm surprised you forgot this, because of my insane focus on the business in this time I spent in
okay.
business.
So you're
now I'm making an
me-
excuse. Here we go.
So you're telling me that you'd have some like six-pack beach bod if you only worked 40 hours a week?
Yes, without question.
Really?
Without question.
Okay.
Yeah.
I highly doubt that.
Without question.
Highly doubt that. But okay, so the point is, and this is again a little bit more of a personal story, but I'm whatever, I'll share it with you.
Yep.
When I first got pregnant, I was, whatever, excited, like, oh, I'm going to be the most fit person on the planet, hashtag fit pregnancy, listen, like, mind over matter. Yeah. And then for anybody who's ever obviously been pregnant before and has had morning sickness and exhaustion, it was like, holy crap. I mean, this is TMI, but like at one point or another, I had to set my barbell down and go throw up in the bathroom. And I was like, shit, this is not working anymore. So I had to recalibrate what does fitness look like to me during this time, especially when my body's changing in the opposite way that I probably want to. And now it's about feeling good, and being healthy rather than hitting a certain physique goal. Yeah. But I tell you what, guys, if I held on to my I've got to have a six-pack, I've got to train 6 days a week, I've got to hit my macros, how miserable would I be right now in my skin and in everything else if I didn't adjust what I said my goal was to where I'm currently at. So number one, in order to like have a healthy mindset in however the world has gone upside down on you, you need to make sure that the goals you set still fit with the life that you're living. Okay. Yep. Now let's pretend that they do. Let's pretend, Kate, nothing's changed. I'm just losing my fire. I'm just losing my motivation. Listen, go back to the goals you said were important to you. Is that still the number one goal? If not, let's talk about what is, and let's calibrate a goal to that. Yeah. Right? It's okay to adjust your goals. Yep. Right? And then to me, honestly, listen, there's discipline and motivation, two sides of, the same coin. Motivation essentially is you want to get out of bed every day. Discipline is you don't want to get out of bed every day, but you do it anyway. Yep. The action itself is more or less still the same. Yep. And listen, motivation's high when you have a very clear vision on what it is that you're doing. And discipline becomes easier when you know what's on the other side of that. So a lot of times when I hear people that lose their focus or lose their motivation or lose their discipline, really what it is they've more or less lost touch with that vision or goal they said was important to them. And whether it's ego, whether it's feeling like a failure, they feel like they don't have permission to change that. Got it. You have permission to change your goals, you guys. Yep. And I think that's what so many people don't allow themselves to do. Yes, and then from there, that's a perfect segue to kind of what's been on my mind with how do you keep your mindset and discipline strong, and that is you have to keep your routine and your habit as close as possible to what it was prior to COVID, assuming that it was good, right? Meaning you're still waking up at the same time. You're still, even if you weren't allowed to go to the office, you're going into your home office at the same time. I think it's super important that you're keeping your daily habits and your daily routines. See, I disagree with that. Let's hear it. I think it's important to have a routine, but I'm tapping into the world of, let's say it's a mom who's responsible for distance learning in the first 3 hours of their day, or making sure their kid doesn't have a meltdown on Zoom. Listen. So creating a new routine. You have to have a routine, right? And that's one of the things. So, again, personal, when I'm going back to my conversations with Andrew and how we're going to handle having a newborn and working, the thing I've consistently said to him is, I know my day and my routine's going to look entirely different. I just want to know what that routine is so that I can plan with it. Yep. If I'm up 4 times a night, I'm up 4 times a night, but I need to know what the routine is. Once you know what your routine is, even if it's I'm only working from 10 to 3, great. Now we can talk about how to get the most out of that 10 to 3. Yep. But you need to have some sort of routine And by the way, I think routine's different than schedule. So you're using them interchangeably. Yes, have a schedule that works for you. But when I think of routine, I think of what do I do from the time my eyes open up in the morning and from the time that I sit down and start my workday.
Sure. Yeah.
That should also be somewhat consistent, somewhat the same.
Correct. Yeah. And I mean, I know this might sound silly or whatever, but brushing your teeth at the same time every day, right? Getting in the shower at the same time every day. If you work out, right, doing those things at the same time. And if they've changed because of COVID, then just developing that new routine, but it has to be the same time every day. That sounds boring and mundane. Do you agree with that?
Okay, I do not. Okay, and I'm a little bit more textbook, meaning my routine is a comfort zone to me. And it's actually like, that's why I've sort of leaned away from, like, traveling actually stresses me out a lot more because it throws me off my routine. And if you know me and you know when I travel, I come home on a Saturday night. It's so that I can get in my routine on a Sunday and so that my week is not thrown off. Because when I come back from a vacation on a Saturday or a Sunday afternoon or Sunday evening, my whole week is thrown off. Yeah. And maybe that's a little extreme,
right?
Is
the layover next week going to throw you off a little bit?
It is. I'm really like
we have a layover
from
Kansas City, Missouri to Detroit.
Heck?
I mean, it's like it's direct flight. It's like a 90 minute.
It's like a 90-minute
flight.
Faster.
It's a 90-minute flight. Yet we have a layover coming back.
So
that's COVID.
So in order to feel like you're making any sort of traction on whatever goal that it is, it doesn't matter if it's running a 5K, it doesn't matter if it's selling 10 more houses between now and the end of the year, you have to have something that you're doing daily that you can take some security in. Yep. Right? And then with a coach, with your broker, with whoever, you can start evaluating, are the activities that I'm doing the right activities for the goal?
Sure.
Do I need to dial them up? Can I dial them back? That's a separate conversation, but I do feel like routine and having an intimate relationship with that goal you say is important to you is very important in maintaining a high level of discipline and mindset. And listen, guys, what I'll just say is this: you have permission to change your mind. You have permission to throw the goal out and change it.
Well, and let's not forget, keeping mindset and discipline strong. Again, thanks Tara Carter and Michael Page for the question. If it's not clear as to why you're doing it, you're not going to have the discipline and the motivation and the strong mindset. If you don't know what you accomplish, right? It's just like the activity I do every year in the business plan, in the agent's business plan. Okay. For instance, you made $100,000 in 2020. Good for you. That's awesome. What do you want to make next year? I want to make $150,000. Awesome. Well, at $100,000 in income, you're essentially living on $8,000 a month. At $150,000 in income, you're essentially living on, we'll just call it $13,000 a month. The difference between 13 and 8 is $5,000 more per month that you'll make in 2021. What are you going to do with that extra $5,000? What is your life going to look like?
You know what, though?
How much
and
of that
I
are you going to put away?
I so disagree with even that activity. Even though, it's real. You should have a plan for your money. But, like, the reality is there's been studies done that the difference between making, there's a threshold, right? And I don't know exactly what the number is. And let's be honest, depending on the market you're in, this number is going to be different. But, like, $80,000 a year, $70,000, $80,000 a year is, like, the happiness satisfaction.
Yeah, correct.
Right?
Covers the bills. You got a little money left over for vacations.
Well, what I'm saying is, when you make $100,000, when you make $150,000, when you make $200,000, your happiness doesn't increase by that amount. Now, listen, your options increase. Whether or not you want to hire a private chef or whether or not you have to cook your meals, you now have those options. Whether or not you want to shop at Whole Foods or Kroger, you now have those options. Yeah. But let me tell you, your happiness in your life does not change that drastically from $100,000 a year to $500,000. It just, you might stay at the Ritz versus the Radisson. Yeah. But you're going to the same place. You're on the same plane. You might be flying first class. You might not. But your life is not exponentially better with the income. So you have to have purpose, why, vision outside of money. Listen, your money is a vehicle to something else. The end goal, the why, should never be, I want to make $150,000 or great, now I want to make $200,000. It should always be deeper. It should be because it will unlock X, Y, Z.
Yes. And if you're clear about that, you're
you
more
have to
likely,
be clear on the why.
If you're clear on that, you're more likely to stick to a boring, mundane routine.
Yeah,
boring, mundane schedule.
Yeah.
So awesome. All right. Well, thanks again for the question. Continue giving us questions at info@gloveru.com. We hope you're enjoying the Live Unreal podcast and particularly this Real Talk series. We've got a lot of good stuff that came out. Last week we did the fourth quarter announcements, all those things that are going on. If you're interested in any of our programs, obviously you can find us at gloveru.com. If you're interested in booking us for an entire day with your office, with your team, with your market center, whatever you call it, liveunrealadvance.com. Those are selling out. We've got about a dozen of those booked, and our plan is to do maybe another 4 or 5 more. That's liveunrealadvance.com. Thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next week. See you guys.
See you guys. Have a good day.
Thank you for taking your time to join Jeff today on the Live Unreal with Glover U podcast. To get started on having an unreal business, take the real estate self-assessment. After you complete the assessment, a member of Glover U will get on a call with you to create an action plan to improve your score. Go to www.gloveru.com/self. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe. Search for Live Unreal with Glover U on iTunes, Podbean, or Spotify and subscribe today. Until next time, remember,
once you have top producers, besides for being good people, they are constantly wanting more, yearning for more. You know, top producers usually are yearning for more. You can't just keep giving them the same. You have to expand your vision.